Okay, welcome everyone. So we are going to be talking all about how to support developers in transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3 and ensuring that success through proper dev tooling. We can start off with intros. I'm Eshita, I'm a research analyst on the Messari team, and we can just go down the line and talk about.
Sure. I'm Tribble, I'm CEO of Agoric. You want me to dive into that, what Agoric is? Or?
Yeah.
Great. So Agoric is a layer 1 blockchain built in the Cosmos SDK that solves the hardest scalability problem, which is programmability and the number of programmers. We were founded in 2018 with a vision to enable large-scale decentralization across the world. I actually worked in 1989 on the first production smart contract. So yes, that's before blockchain and before the term was coined. But that was the model of software enforcing the terms of a contract-like agreement between third parties. And so we have had smart contracts long before blockchain with eBay, PayPal, Venmo, Uber, Lyft, high-frequency trading, and so forth. That was $1 trillion market cap. So the question is, how do we bring blockchain out to the rest of the world? And that's all about meeting programmers where they're at to enable them to program this stuff.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Yaoqi, the founder of Alllayer. So previously, I started my research back in 2012 on peer-to-peer network consensus protocols and also privacy technologies, and then co-founded Zilliqa back in 2017. Yeah, and then since last year we started Alllayer. Basically, at Alllayer we are providing these application-tailored roll-up solutions for dApps like NFTs, games across different EVM and also WASM chains. Yeah, we also got some early backers like Polychain, Jump, and some good angels like Ethereum co-founder Gavin and Messari founder Ron. Yeah, I'm glad to share more later on in this panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Omer Goldberg. I'm the CEO of Chaos Labs. Chaos Labs is a cloud platform that uses agent and scenario-based simulations to stress test DeFi protocols in black swan events, times of high market volatility. The other use case is optimization of risk parameters. So you can run simulations at scale, understand how it's going to affect the downstream economics of your protocol, and make informed decisions.
Hey everyone, my name is Dmitry, co-founder of QuickNode. We provide API access to 15 blockchains and 30 networks. And I spent the last 15 years in the hosting, CDN, and distributed system space.
Awesome. So to start things off, what is it that the blockchain and smart contracts enable for apps, and why should people care?
So for me, as I said, it's about, a smart contract is enforcing the terms of a relationship of a contract between third parties. So what it enables really is strangers to cooperate with each other, right? eBay before blockchain, you could buy and sell goods where most of the transactions involved no humans except the two at the other end that have never met each other and never will. And that's hugely valuable. That has enabled all sorts of new ways for humans to cooperate. With smart contracts running on blockchain, you take the trusted intermediary out of the middle, and now people can deal directly with each other. And that's, the more cooperation we enable, the more cooperative world we have, and that's been kind of the driving vision for a long time. And so, that's also a new class of business, right? You can go in and go, I can enable this new kind of cooperation, and I can make money at it and add value to people.
Yeah, for me, I think the first point is about token economics. Basically with tokens, for all the developers in Web3, you have a better way to do the user acquisition compared to traditional Web2. Basically, you can have a better way to do the fundraising directly from some retail investors. In that case, you probably can have much better, financial capital to grow your business and build your product. Beyond that, it's really about decentralization. So because blockchains and smart contracts can really enable your application to be as decentralized and transparent as possible. In that case, you can basically remove some of the intermediaries, to directly face to your customers, and by removing these intermediaries, right? Definitely you can save a lot of cost by basically paying this middleman. And in that case, it's also cost saving for the product itself.
I'll add on to the great explanations that we had here, and just start with a caveat. So, and then smart contracts are just software, it's code. The only difference is that depending on the blockchain, it's immutable. And the use cases for which it's uniquely fitted are areas in which you want to enforce trust in a distributed way. So finance is a big, application of that, and we're seeing that with DeFi. But anywhere else where you want transparency and a layer of trust is a good use case.
Yeah, absolutely. I can echo what the panel has said here. Unique business models that simply were not possible before, fundraising models, eliminating middlemen, creating a layer of trust that is governed by computers, and really transforming processes which haven't really evolved for perhaps hundreds of years.
So what do each of you think is the single biggest blocker for Web 2 developers entering Web 3, and how do we solve for that? We can start off with Dmitry.
Sure. There are a number, and at QuickNode we're trying to solve one by one. The first one is infrastructure. How do you power tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users of Web3 applications? There's also the education part. Where do you get resources? How do you transition from Web 2 to Web 3? I think that's it.
I'll start by saying for anyone who's in the crowd and is a developer or considering starting to work on Web3, first of all, there's really nice marketing for smart contracts as this new kind of like novel concept, but it's just a program. So if you've written Java or anything in C, the syntax is kind of similar and it's not that scary. In terms of the biggest gaps for getting started, I'll echo and say it's definitely infrastructure. So if you're a Web 2 developer, you're used to working with AWS, Firebase, all of these nice cloud providers that abstract a lot of the complications away, you're going to need to get your hands dirty in Web 3 because a lot of that doesn't exist, or it's definitely not polished in the way that you're used to. So on the base level, you can get started today. On the infrastructure kind of space, we have a long way to go to making the developer experience polished and as reliable as what we're used to in Web 2.
Yeah, so echo to Dmitry and Omer. So in my opinion, I think the biggest issue is really about scalability. Because when we talk to most of the Web2 developers, right, they just couldn't really get used to the low throughput and then high transaction fees in Web3, especially with some existing L1s, right? Because in typical Web2, you just need to set up your infra in AWS or different cloud services, right? You don't really need to care about like paying some transaction fees in the L1s. And beyond that, in Web 2, probably your latency is in milliseconds, but in Web 3, typically it's a few seconds or even a few minutes. So this kind of infrastructure difference and basically the scalability is a really big issue for the Web 2 developers. And for the past few years, with some of the efforts in this space, we sort of explore the sharding and app chains and right now roll up, right? We can see the scalability issue becoming sort of less and less, but still in the future, if we really have some super applications that handles millions of users and even tons of million requests, definitely we need much better scaling solutions for not just Web3 developers and also some new Web2 developers. Yeah.
What's interesting about that, the scaling side to me feels like engineering that we've done on a lot of different systems, databases and networks and all that sort of stuff, where a lot of the Web 2 developers can bring that expertise. One of the main reasons, or one of the reasons to get lots of Web 2 developers in is so many elements of that expertise are applicable to sort of the engineering challenges. From my perspective, though, the hardest thing, it's sort of the extension of the infrastructure piece, really is the programmability. My previous gig to working on blockchain was a $1 billion payment instrument. And, in the fintech area, everyone you work with has a thing they're working on the side and project that they're working on with someone or, something going on. They're all very entrepreneurial. And they went and looked at Bitcoin and Ether's and they tried stuff out. And it's just like, come back to me when you're grown up. This is crazy to try and do. I'm going to work on my buddy's hedge fund, right? It was very much the programmability wasn't there. And so for me, it's partly, can they just pop up VS Code? Can they put a breakpoint and stop through it? And is it in a programming language they're familiar with the toolkit and approach and architecture they're familiar with? And so a lot of the reason why, Agoric is about enabling this stuff in a hardened version of JavaScript is because that's what 80% of the programmers on the planet know, and and they're already building sports sites and fan sites and music sites and art and all these things, enabling them to also write the smart contracts so the deal making is happening under the logic that they did, means that suddenly now all these people that are UX experts can come in and help our UX, people that are all of the auditors out there that audit normal programs that millions of programmers write can come and audit our programs or audit programs for the blockchain. And so, I mean, right now in terms of number of programmers that know Solidity, let's say there's more lawyers in Denver than know how to program Solidity. And so if you want to be able to scale the programmer base, you've got to bring them something else.
Yeah. So, I mean, nowadays it seems like everyone's looking for a developer, every Web3 project. So how acute is this talent problem, and what is it outside of infrastructure and tools that's needed to bring on more developers? Is it education?
I'll say for us, it's been a challenge, right? Finding Web3 native engineers. But I'll say generally it depends what you're trying to do. If you're trying to fork Uniswap and put in your own business logic, that's not the end of the world. Even if you don't have a ton of experience, you can probably do it reasonably well. If you're trying to do some of the more intricate things like MEV, work on problems that have to do with synchronicity, distributed programming, that's where there's going to be a big on-ramp for the developers. They're going to need to study. For us, we've built basically like an internal blockchain school in the company, and essentially now everybody who joins, it's part of their ramp up. The first 4 to 6 weeks, they're not touching any production systems. They're just going through the tasks, and it's been surprising how effective it's been, but also surprising at the same time when you have really, really senior engineers that realizing that the ramp up is real. Even if you know distributed programming, even if you know how to work with databases, even if you've worked with languages like Solidity, the learning curve is still real. So it's also resources, and it's just also being patient and realizing that when you're onboarding people, there's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah, to also touch on education and support, for example, QuickNode has a Discord community of over 4,000 members where if you're a new or a veteran, you can go and get help and get support. And we also have a number of partners and funds that we're working with to provide office hours and a really, really talented support team which guides people that are building decentralized applications and asking questions on, oh, how do I do this or how do I do that? So our support team is able to lend a hand and kind of guide them in the right direction on how to build certain things. And also we have a guide section with over 100 long-tail original guides. So, if you Google something like how to create an Ethereum address in PHP, you'll probably land on one of our guides.
So I believe most of us read some reports from Electric Capital or some of the news, right? So there are reports around number of developers contributing to the public Web3 or blockchain projects. Probably every month we have around 18,000 people. And but for the developer, I believe most of them are sort of blockchain infrastructure developers. And compared to Web2, I believe over 30 million developers. Definitely in crypto or blockchain, we need sort of more developers to build concrete applications. Based on my experience, typically because we are building the sort of the very hardcore blockchain infrastructure, this scaling solution. Typically, when we talk to developers or hiring some new guys from the Web2, I think the biggest issue is really about the man side. Because for most of the developers in Web2, they feel that they already get used to this client-server model. And right now, if you want to change their man side from the client server to this peer-to-peer network, and also with a lot of this transaction and decentralization, typically it takes them 3 to 6 months to digest the kind of information. And beyond that, you also need to let them to understand consensus protocols and also different interfaces and programming languages. That also are relatively tough. And yeah, sort of the man side is sort of the big problem based on our experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So, at a previous session here, they were talking about how, yep, everyone is hiring. It's a bear market, but not for hiring. So there's a lot of demand for talent, not just in Web3, but also in Web2. We do a lot of hiring out in Web2, and I think every project should to get more of that expertise in. But you have a training burden regardless. And one of the things that people who have in it need to kind of record and capture so they can play back are, what are the little assumptions that were real surprising when you first got in that we need to educate people on, and you know, once you're there, you're sort of used to, like the peer-to-peer versus client-server, or the expectation that you don't get to upgrade this later, right? You know, or some things are immutable, right? And then the second half of that is there are some assumptions in Web3 that I think are a nice starting point in you on some of them, but you also need to get beyond them, right? How many Web 2 applications or shipped products got it right on version 1? Immutability is great, except when you didn't get it right on version 1. So you need to think about what is it going to take to get to version 2, what it's going to take to add a feature, because you know the world changes, and having an application that is great for 6 months and then obsolete, unless you know how you're getting to version 2, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's true. I would love to get into more project-specific questions. So, Dean, how does Agoric enable composable smart contracts, and how is that useful for developers?
Sure. So, you know, going back to the JavaScript model, you know, JavaScript was out. It was in browsers. Experts could do really cool things in browsers. But you know, and beginners would kind of start to get going, but all right. Then React came out and Vue came out, these component libraries that they really captured the affordances of what you need to do to handle mouse clicks and re-rendering and dynamic update and so forth. And so 6 months later, beginning programmers could do fancier, more interactive, more scalable, adaptable to your screen size applications than experts could the year before, right? Framework matters. And so having a language in which you can build a framework and then building a framework, that's one of the primary ways not only that you can give developers a leg up, but that's what they're used to. That's why there are 5 million developers that can whip together a cool application, right? And so we provide that same kind of thing using the same approaches like React or Vue, but where the affordances are pricing and trade and did you give me what I want and is it escrowed and those kinds of things. And that lets you program at a much higher level. Most of programming in crypto right now is send money to a random number and hope something good happens, right? It's very low level. You're representing things with essentially addresses in memory or addresses on chain, whatever it is. You know, we used to program like that, but we got beyond that. And to get millions of programmers in, we need to get beyond that for Web3 applications as well. And so JavaScript hardened so you can run arbitrary untrusted code deterministically in a confined container with a component library that lets you program and put together components that some expert built and put them together safely. And what that means is like we're shipping the platform and a first set of smart contracts to do for first launch of a stable token for the Cosmos ecosystem, IST. And all of those contracts to do IST are built in JavaScript with this model where, you know, one of the core elements that can trade USDC for IST one-to-one and back and forth. It's 100 lines of JavaScript that I could explain to a beginner. It's not about addresses. It's not about, you know, low-level details. All of those matter. All the infrastructure really cares about determinism and robustness, but the programming model needs to be higher level. And there's a lot of people working on different forms of higher level programming model, but that's how we're going to get more and more people building more and more use cases.
So Dmitry, QuickNode had a big product announcement this week. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we're super excited to announce QuickNode Marketplace. It's the app store for blockchain and Web3. It allows QuickNode users to access, browse, and utilize third-party Web3 APIs and services. It gives developers a single place to discover new tools and products to help them build better and faster. And on the flip side, it gives blockchain tool developers a vehicle to access the over 100,000 users on the QuickNode platform. We have some amazing partners, including BlockNative, BlockTorch, Luabase, Crossman, Flashbots, Go Plus Security, and Operator, and Execute.dev. So with a single click, you can get your NFT minting APIs, you can protect your transactions, and what else? And get SQL index data from someone like Luabase.
That's awesome. Congrats. Omer, so Chaos Labs is building secure testing environments for developers and built out the product for Ethereum first. Could you talk a little bit more about why it was crucial to go EVM first?
Yeah, so the current version of the product supports all EVM-compatible blockchains. Really, it was a combination of where the developers are and where the problems hurt the most. So DeFi really exploded in a significant way, first on Ethereum, then subsequently in a bunch of other chains. Initially, that's where the demand was when we started working with folks like Chainlink, Maker, and a bunch of other protocols. And I think today it's a little bit more balanced. You have interesting things happening in the Cosmos ecosystem, Solana, and others, but that's where the demand has been the largest in those ecosystems, and that's why we picked those first.
Great. So we have about 3 minutes left. As dev tool providers, what are some trends you're seeing in Web3 currently?
Well, my favorite trend is that in the previous downturns, Web 2 companies and Web 2 developers went away when the downturn happened and said, oh, that proves it's all crap, right? They didn't do that this time. The Fidelities of the world are it's like, oh yeah, it's a volatile market. It goes up, it goes down. It's really exciting. There's a bunch of future here. We're going to stick it out, right? And they proceed with their business. And that's an enormous shift in what the future of this stuff looks like as these core companies have looked at this and go, yep, there's a real value there. We know what it is. We know what we're building towards, and we know what's going to come back.
Yeah, we're seeing projects go cross-chain, multi-chain, aggregation layers, and also maturity in the projects, and seeing more traditional companies enter the space and wanting to explore and experiment with blockchain and Web3 technologies.
For me, it's just that the abstractions are getting better, and we're building cooler things. So in 2017, the biggest app on Ethereum was CryptoKitties, and you would just click a UI, and it would dispatch a single transaction to the chain. Today, we have on-chain hedge funds, derivatives, exchanges. The abstractions are getting better, and we're able to compose new tools faster, so the innovation is also coming faster at us.
Yeah, I think it's really about the convenience for developers. So right now, as you can see, right, a lot of these API services and also wallets, right, it just make it very convenient for not just Web3 developers and also Web2 developers. Sometimes you don't even to create your private key. It's just some other ways for you to access the application or build your own product. Actually, on our side, earlier, we are also trying to have the rollup as service. So for example, for the NFT mint, if you know that your NFT mint will attract a lot of users, right? So we just provide dedicated L2 solution for you. You have all the mint on this layer, and then we can roll up to the Ethereum or the L1s. Similar to games. For different games, it will handle a million of users, right? In that case, you need a dedicated layer. So you need, we can provide a rollup as service, and so basically you just spin off the layer by click a bunch of buttons, and then can immediately handle all the traffic and the requests from the million of users. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you all for taking the time.
Yeah,
Thank you so much
you.
for having us.